Got a really great topic today to talk about that comes out of some actual work I've been doing with a client. And as a lot of you know, increasingly I'm spending a lot of time working with and discussing and figuring out sales and marketing integration. And the topic, of course, I got a little crazy with the title. I couldn't figure out which verb to use, but let's just call it connecting. I think I forgot an N in there, didn't I? We'll stick another one in just for fun in case. Probably can't even see it on there. But connecting, leveraging, integrating outbound prospecting with content marketing. And increasingly, I find that is a critical success factor with my clients who are trying to figure out how to both bridge the gap between sales and marketing and better leverage marketing to drive sales qualified leads, et cetera, et cetera. So this might get a little complicated. I'll try to make it simple. And actually it starts very simply, and that is, you've got your typical sales call him an inside sales guy, and I don't know why I always draw somebody with a hat here kind of thing. And they're on the phone, right? If you have either dedicated inside salespeople or perhaps your actual salespeople are making cold calls, there's phone work to be done, right? You've got to reach out and try and get connected. And I've done a lot of stuff on prospecting and scripting, etc. But in a typical week, or in a typical day, I should say, these folks on a prospecting side are doing 80 plus calls per day. So a lot of activity, right? And typically a success ratio, or what they're getting, is somewhere on the order of 2 to 3 first scheduled appointments, right? That's pretty typical in the teams that I build. And 2 to 3%, or slightly less than that, slightly more than that, is not a really bad number, but you also have to acknowledge that it's pretty inefficient. On the other side, you've got marketing that's trying to develop and nurture prospects and struggling to drive traffic. Well, the aha, if you will, was that, well, wait a minute, we've got actual people who are going about the business of reaching out and trying to interact with folks. How can we leverage these inside sales and these outbound prospecting folks into the marketing effort to drive opt-ins, which will then come full circle and feed the sales team again? So, a little bit of context. A typical prospecting campaign, one of the terms that I use is pursuit, persistence, criteria, right? So when you make a cold call, and I've talked about this and written a lot about this, how many attempts are you going to make, right? 1 or 2 calls is not going to do it. On average, right, the teams we're building are going through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll make that 8, and we'll make that 1, possibly even 10, right? Maybe this as well. But ultimately, you're going to make a number of what we refer to as touches, touches attempts. What I'll say to folks is, if you're not willing to make 10 calls, don't bother making 1. Most of the time, we see the top appointment setting happen in somewhere in this range of attempts, right? So that's where you get your optimal, I think of it as yield for appointments, right? Somewhere in there. But bottom line is, you're gonna set up your prospect and your cold calling campaign to be somewhere around 8 to 10 touches per target, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm already expending this effort, so now the question came down to, how do we coordinate that? How do we get more bang for the buck out of it? We're making the calls anyway, so what else can we do? And this is where it kind of gets fun. So what we did, in simplest terms, was we said, we're making these cold calls anyway. What if, as part of the selling process, right, and sometimes we're leaving voicemails, and I'm not going to get into that today, but you get that concept. What if within this process, we made sure that the salespeople also sent an email that was put together by marketing that specifically was intended to drive this prospect into the marketing database, into the marketing funnel, if you will, for an opt-in, get an opt-in. I'll draw over here this as our opt-in database, right? As most of you hopefully know, you really can't just start flooding people with emails. Your marketing team can't send them emails. So even if you've got a great content strategy that you want to execute down here, right, they've got to be in your opt-in database. So it really is almost a chicken and egg kind of conversation that says, how do I get people into my marketing database so that I can leverage this great content strategy and then hopefully nurture those leads back up to sales, right? Because purpose of content marketing, purpose of marketing is to drive what we like to call an SQL, sales qualified lead, back up to sales as an inbound, right? So what I really want is not quite an inbound, that's the wrong term, but as an expected or planned for call, right? So how do I do this? But it's really how do I get from here to there? Because if you're not in my opt-in database, I can't execute against this wonderful content strategy. So this is the problem we're trying to solve. So what we said is, you know what? Within the CRM, within Salesforce.com, we could create a templated email that sales sent out as part of their calling campaign. They just did it at around their fourth call here. So at around call number 4, we decided number 4 actually, we said you're going to send an email to the prospect. The email, is going to go to their inbox, and we did a very specific email. I'll tell you that the email had a couple of characteristics that were really important. One was, let's call it a strong, and really what it was is a catchy subject, right? In this case, I think we said something like, please don't send that cease and desist letter just yet. In the body, it was very much a personal, and I'll even say bordering on humorous content. Most importantly, I'm going to change colors for this one. What it had was a strong call to action, right? And by strong, I don't mean strong arming. I mean it actually contained a very compelling offer that we had built for the prospect that they could access through a link, right? I'll put the link right here. So the email got in their inbox. The goal was create a strong call to action, be sort of funny and humorous, not annoying, etc. We'll come back around here, right? So what I wanted that link to do was to take the individuals to not our website for some basic content, but a very high-performing landing page. Now, for those of you who are saying, well, what's a landing page? What the heck is this thing? We use a piece of technology called Leads Pages. I believe it's leadspages.net. You want to check them out. And it's a purpose-built landing page that allows for lots of testing, A/B testing, etc., etc., and the ability to tweak and change colors and very quickly iterate against that, so you're not going to your web vendor and always trying to get changes made, etc. So there's a whole nother classification of technologies, right? This stuff is happening in our CRM, if I want to put a box around it, right? This stuff is happening in our marketing automation platform. Well, a landing page is a whole different piece of technology that lives outside of both of these, not even on our website kind of thing. So I'll let you look into that, but the point is we wanted to use some very powerful technology to drive the conversion, right? The landing page is really kind of simple because what I'm trying to do at a minimum is get your email, right? So I can put you in my marketing database, etc. Right? So the purpose of the landing page is to present the email opt-in, and this is important, in exchange for a strong and compelling offer. Now, I'll talk about this in a second, but when I talk about an offer, I want you to think about it in terms of present. I'll even do another colored bow on here to make it interesting. But the idea is that you're going to come to this opt-in, and I'm going to create an offer that is so interesting to you or compelling to you that you're going to give me your email opt-in. Some folks call this a lead magnet, some folks call it an ethical bribe, what have you. But the point is, I really want to drive the prospect to move into my marketing funnel so that I can further market to them even if I don't get my appointment. Let's talk about the offer. This is not a white paper. This is not a case study. I've got lots of content on my site and I talk a lot about what are appropriate offers. In this particular case, and I won't go into all the details, I'll probably put together a case study, and if you want more info and if you want to be on my lead list, right, you want to click down here because I can send you some other documents. But in this particular case, the offer was a how-to guide specifically for the prospect that gave them a series of, let's call them tips and tricks and hacks and things that they can go and implement that day in order to improve their world. It was not a pitch for our product, it was not a deal on our product, it was not anything about our product, but I'll tell you, it did validate them as a prospect, as a qualified prospect. So don't mean to be really confusing and hide things and make this sort of secret here, but more conversations to come on what a compelling offer is. But I can't stress enough that this is really where the magic happens. And we basically went out and commissioned somebody. We spent money for a third party to create an offer that we knew would be attractive to these prospects, something that they would want, and essentially that we were giving them as a gift in exchange for the email. So pretty slick. Kind of recapping the whole thing, we took the cold calling folks, people doing outbound prospecting, as part of their regular calling process. We had them send an email through Salesforce. The email was designed to be catchy, sort of, catch their eye and get them engaged and make them chuckle a little bit. But really, the goal of the email was to get them to click on the link because we said, hey, here's something we've built for you. It's not a sales pitch. It doesn't even have our logo on it, but we think you want it. This is going to direct them to a landing page which says, hey, we want you to have this thing, but we're gonna require your email so we know it's you, and email to your inbox, etc. And then they're going to download it now in their database and what have you. So let's go through some of the things that happen. Well, I'll let you do all the math, but you got these folks doing 80 calls a day with an average persistence of 8, right? So you can run the math on weekly basis how many accounts they're touching. I'll tell you that the open rate on these emails, that I do this in green because it's really kind of cool. Open rate, which is really awesome, was more than 40%. Well, that's pretty slick, right, in terms of people that are opening it. More interesting, the actual click-through rate, right? How many people that opened it clicked on the actual landing page link itself was varied quite a bit, but between 30 and 40%. So 30 and 40% of the people that actually opened that email went to the landing page, and here's where it gets interesting. About a third, I guess I shouldn't do percent and a dot, but a third of the folks went for the offer. So pretty compelling, right? If you basically say you send out 100 emails, right, on a given week or day or what have you, and you got 40 people opening those emails, right, actually looking at them, you're going to get about 12 or 13 people who are going to actually click through to that, and that's going to get you 3 or 4 folks per 100 contacts. Not a bad acquisition rate on emails, especially when you consider that we also found that at least one of these folks were able to nurture back all the way through to an expected call. So on a given 100-person campaign, 100 contact campaign, where on average we're going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 conversations, just by virtue of following this process, we're going to pick up at least another meeting at it. So very powerful stuff, and a way you can integrate an expense and a process you're already using with something you want to use and that's going to pay future dividends. So if If you have any questions, please do drop me a line. Click on the link to opt into my mailing list, and there'll be more of these kind of documents and more of these kind of process things. I want to talk more about offers, and please feel free to email me with any questions you might have about how this works or how you can get more effectiveness out of your outbound prospecting efforts or your direct marketing, your content marketing efforts as well.